starting to rain. Actually, my whole riding career, I haven't ridden in the rain as much as a lot of people have. It's just kind of worked out that way. I'm going to go a different way. Downtown the other way is kind of jammed up. This is going to be a dual response. First, I'm going to do a response to Maikeli's video about advice for people. I'm going to touch a couple of other areas. I'm not going to get into some of the areas that everybody else has already talked about, because I think everybody's covered it, and I don't have any major disagreements with a lot of it, like secondary education and stuff like that. But sometimes in life, especially when you're younger and less experienced, but I've even seen older people do this, you can be your own worst enemy based on the decisions you make and how you deal with those situations. First off, as an example, I want to talk about something too. Sometimes you get an idea in your head, or you pursue a financial plan, a job plan, or even a relationship, and you expect it's going to reach a certain point or a certain goal, and it just never seems to happen, and it just seems to result in more and more bad times, more and more failure. And yet there's a certain group of people, and at times in my life I'll even classify myself, that just will not abandon a bad plan no matter how bad it is. They'll go 6 months, a year, 2 years, even sometimes over a decade, hoping that things will get better, hoping that the plan will come through. And you know, sometimes in life you have to cut your losses. I know it's a hard thing to think about, because it can also make you feel stupid too, that like you want it to succeed so bad you're just going to keep at it and beat your head against a wall or something. But my philosophy is better to be a fool that was a fool for 6 months or a year or 2 years than a fool that was a fool for a decade or more, or maybe even running your whole life over a decision you made that you thought would have a much better outcome. So don't ever be afraid in life to cut your losses. If something is not really working out at all the way you planned it, I'd say in 6 months, start thinking seriously about abandoning it. After a year, make a plan to abandon it. After 2 years, except in maybe a very few rare cases, you know, face reality and call it quits. You guessed wrong, you made a bad decision, whatever, I mean. And that leads to my other part too, taking responsibility in life. And that was a hard thing. It was almost like, you know, science talks about us as being conscious beings, because we don't just react like some animals do, like a lizard. If it's hungry, it eats. If it's tired, it sleeps. It doesn't really ponder things or think about right and wrong and stuff like that. We have a little bit higher level. We have that consciousness. Well, I think there's one more higher conscious than that. That's when you finally realize that you're responsible for the majority of things in your life that either go right or go wrong. I'm not saying in every case, but I see so many people enter into relationships or financial deals and stuff like that, and then if it fails, they totally blame the other person, when in fact, if you even just look at it logically and step back, you decided to say yes to this deal. Unless you can show me somehow that somebody held a gun to your head. So the quicker you can actually take responsibility and own it for the things that went wrong, and believe me, relationship-wise, I've got a track record of owning up to a lot of wrong. And even other areas in my life too I could go into, but it seems like the time it starts going the right direction is about that time you realize that, you know, sure, maybe there's 20% in your life where you just totally out of left field got taken advantage of, and there may be even those very few people to where the majority of times in their life too it was just things happening to them. But I don't really see that in a lot of people's cases. And when I used to get that way too, I don't think I even wanted to be around myself, because I was such a whiny bitch about everything, you know, thinking that it was everybody else's fault that this happened to me, or everybody else's fault that happened to me. So I think it's rather liberating to finally say, hey, you know what? I had the final choice in the matter too. When I picked a relationship with that person, when I entered into that financial deal to buy a car or entered into that financial deal to buy a house, you know, I always had the option up until the end to not do it. So, and you move on, you give yourself freedom to be wrong, you start forgiving yourself, you start cutting yourself some slack. One thing a person told me when I was I think I was still a teenager, hadn't quite turned 20 yet, is they said, Chuck, I want to give you some advice. I notice as you deal with people, you cut everybody else 10 miles of slack, but you don't hardly cut yourself any slack at all. And they were right, really. I always expected way more of myself than I did of anybody else, and you know what? I'm just as ordinary as anybody else. I can't do any better. I can't necessarily make any less mistakes.